With the next generation science standards, I think it's important to recognize that these standards really represent a conceptual shift in what it means to teach science. One of the things I've seen happen a lot, especially as NGSS came out, and still to this day, I'll see teachers take the standards, look at them, and say, okay, the standard mentions something about waves. I teach a lesson about waves. My curriculum, my course, aligns to the standards. And that's not really it. The next generation science standards puts a lot higher emphasis on the skill and process of science, not just can you name the parts of a wave, can you name the parts of a cell, can you name the parts. It's a different way of thinking. So it's focusing on the process of science, the action of science, teaching science as something that you do rather than facts that you know or don't know. Now, the standards also include science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts. And those are different ways in which the standards are tied together in the form of science and engineering practices and cross-cutting concepts. Those are ways that the standards are tied together across the areas of science. Disciplinary core ideas are how the standards are tied together from elementary school up through seniors in high school. And so when we look at a page from NGSS, we see standards, and then we see these other areas. And I think for some folks, those other areas get treated as slightly less important, when the reality is that those are some of the most essential things, especially at the elementary level. Things like science and engineering practices, they look like fundamental skills that scientists do. These things that scientists do, no matter what discipline they're in, matter a lot. And so sometimes it's easy to miss those because they're lower on the page. They don't necessarily look like standards in the way standards appear in other content areas. But they are critical. And so as we are looking at NGSS, this isn't just a simple game of the topic in the standard matches the topic that I wanted to teach. It really requires a lot of thought of looking at the standard, looking at the verb in the standard. Is the verb explain or identify, or is it create or model or evaluate, right? The verb matters a lot. What practices are the standards saying should come in? So if we are evaluating something, are we looking at practices around observation? What cross-cutting concepts are there? What disciplinary core ideas? And those are all important and critical that we look at all of those in considering this. We can't just ignore most of it and pick out the little bit of the standard and just tack it on a lesson plan to have something there. This is really trying to reshape the way that we approach teaching science. And it's going to probably feel and look different from ways that we approach teaching other subjects, and that's fine. So as we deal with NGSS standards, both in this module and then throughout the course, because they're obviously not going anywhere, it's really critical that we consider what it was that the standard intended for us to help students be able to do more than what's it about or what's the topic. So again, as with anything, please reach out if you're struggling to understand it. The standards can be a little bit difficult to follow, and it can be a bit more difficult to follow if you don't have an incredibly strong science background. And so that's a great place to work with others, to reach out to classmates, to reach out to me, and use other people as resources, and to gain other perspectives on how they are interpreting or understanding the standard, and what it is that they think it wants students to be able to do.